to cook. Now, Shavuot is an interesting Yom Tov. It's not like Pesach. Pesach, we have objects to play with. We have the matzah, we have the seder. Sukkot, we have etrog, lulav, sukkah. What's Eichler selling on Shavuot? You know, where are we buying for Shavuot? So there are customs, and the customs are big, and they're important. And there are two famous customs. The one that we already talked about, that we gave you an obligation to make a cheesecake, is to eat dairy. And there's another custom, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which this year I think is a little challenging, and that is for people to stay up all night on the night of Shavuot, which would be Thursday night, and study Torah. So we're going to analyze those two customs today, and we're going to see that customs in Judaism aren't just customs. There's a depth to it. So we're going to start with the dairy one. Okay, and there are many, many, many reasons. Okay, I hope everybody's ready. I'm going to share screen, and here we go. Yeah, okay. All right, so dairy, why eat dairy on Shavuot? Okay, that's our first goal. So there are mucho reasons. I'm going to start with three reasons, but I'm going to start, the first two are really basic. I think people are very familiar with that. The most famous reason is when the Jewish people received the Torah at Har Sinai, included with special instructions how to slaughter and prepare meat for eating. Until then, the Jews had not followed these laws. Thus, all their meat plus the cooking pots were now considered not kosher. So they couldn't prepare. So the alternative was to get dairy, right? Ice cream over steak. This raises the question, why didn't they just, make it kosher? And the answer is that the revelation at Sinai occurred on Shabbat, and slaughter and cooking were prohibited. Interesting, okay? So the rabbis tell us that Matan Torah was on Shabbat. They received laws about kosher and non-kosher things. Therefore, their stuff wasn't usable. So dairy was an easier one. I have to ask the cooks in my audience, is it easier to prepare dairy or not? I'm not sure. But bottom line is that they had things that were just naturally dairy, and that's why we eat the minhag to have dairy meals on Shabbat. Okay, I'm not going to go into it that much. Nice, very nice. Okay, there is a second reason, also very, very popular. If you guys remember 2 weeks ago, we talked about Sefirat HaOmer. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm sure you remember. You have a great memory. We talked about that the Omer started. What was the word Omer? Omer was a measurement of flour, right? And it was a Korban Omer that started the counting. You guys remember? And we said that it was brought from barley, which was animal foods. And then you count 49 days, and then they brought Shtei Halechem, which is also a flour offering, which is made out of wheat, right? Barley was animal food. You remember we brought a proof from Sotah, which means we have to elevate ourselves on these days all the way to the climax of Shavuot. So the climax is the korban, the flour korban called Shtei Halechem. So the Shtei Halechem was, here we go, stuff's a little boring, but let's just get through this. On the holiday of Shavuot, a 2-loaf bread offering was brought to the temple. To commemorate this, we eat 2 meals on Shavuot. First, a dairy meal, and then after a short break, we eat traditional holiday meat meal, which means to indicate that there is a Shtei Halechem, each one being a meal. I don't know if you caught what I just said. As a matter of fact, I remember in our house, my father, alav hashalom, this is what we did. My father was not a big dairy guy, and we didn't like to have dairy meals on the holiday. So what he used to do is have coffee and cake, cheesecake, and then wait a half hour, and then have the meal. So interesting that this is basically what this halakha just said, that really was the original custom. Not necessarily only to have dairy meals, but to differentiate, which means to show 2 separate meals. And 2 separate meals are indicated by a dairy meal and a meat meal. Okay, so right now, we were informed and totally not excited about what I just said. Comes this third reason. Now, I learned this third reason years ago, and I never understood it. So I want to thank all the people on my screen for forcing me to figure out something that I don't understand, and now I can share it with you. So thank you so much. And it really, it's I think it goes places that are amazing. So watch carefully. Reason number 3. Here we go. First, let me show you the reason and tell you why it makes no sense, and then hopefully we'll learn something from it. Ready? Here we go. Moshe was born on the 7th day of Adar. I think everybody knows that. Zayin Adar was Moshe's birthday, and unfortunately the day that he passed away. We also know that he stayed at home for 3 months. What do you mean he stayed at home? It wasn't like he was a single guy. He was a baby. His mother hid him. Everybody knows that he was born in the 7th month. He was born early, before the 7th month. And she hid him, H-I-D, she hid him because they were killing all the babies with his family before being placed in the Nile River on the 6th of Sivan. Because let's count. If he was born in Adar, right? So then there's Nisan, Iyar, Sivan. So on the 6th of Sivan, 6th, 7th of Sivan, he was then taken out, right? Put in the river. Moshe was rescued by Paro's daughter, who adopted Moshe and took him to live in Paro's palace. You guys know all this. You all saw the 10 Commandments. But right away, a problem arose when she found him. You know the story. It's in the Torah. Open, not Midrash, in the Torah. You know what to feed. In those days, there was no bottled baby formula. So when the birth mother wasn't available, the caretaker would hire a wet nurse. In case of Moshe, he kept refusing to nurse from Egyptian women. And the Talmud explains that, okay, so let's stop for a second. Right. So you know the story. It's in the Torah. Remember, Miriam was in the bushes, right? And the baby was crying, and they were trying to feed the baby to whoever was from the Egyptian women, right, to nurse him, and he refused. Miriam jumps out, I'll get you somebody who could do it, which is the mother, yada, yada. So on the 6th or 7th of Sivan, Moshe refused to drink milk from an Egyptian woman. Okay, let's stop for a second. Why? I don't know if it's Moshe himself who made that decision or Hashem made that decision. I'm not sure. But look what it says. The Gemara explains that his mouth needed to be totally pure because one day he's going to communicate directly with God. And then Paro's daughter found a woman. So the eating of dairy foods on Shavuot commemorates this phenomenon, in the early life of Moshe, which occurred on that day and the day that Shavuot fell. Okay. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Are you kidding? I mean, this is insane. Okay, I mean, the story itself, okay, I got it. All right, so Moshe didn't do it or whatever, or Hashem made sure that he wouldn't drink because that mouth is going to speak to God. I got it. But because that happened on the 6th of Sivan, which happens to be Shavuot, therefore you have to go make cheesecake? Doesn't make sense. And you know that everything does make sense. There's got to be a lesson here. So what's the lesson? And that's what we're going to do. So let's start slowly. So the first step in trying to understand the depth of this custom, to me, was, does this apply to us also? What's the halacha? Let's take a look. Here we go. So the Gemara says that Moshe refused to nurse from a non-Jewish woman because Shalomouth will speak with divine presence. Right. Does this teaching apply to those destined to speak to God face to face or everyone? Which means, is there such a concept for non-Moshes? Believe it or not, here is a halacha book, sefer. The Chayei Adam, a famous halacha sefer, writes a 2-sentence halacha. According to the letter of the law, one is allowed to have a non-Jew nurse a Jewish child. But if possible, one should avoid allowing a non-Jew nurse a child. Okay, let's discuss this again, which means without going into, deep details here, it is not non-kosher food. Okay, interesting if you want to call it Chalav Yisrael or not, but I'm not going there. Okay, so it's not non-kosher food, which means a child who needs to be nursed is allowed to be nursed by a non-Jewish woman. Why you would do that, I have no idea, but that's allowed. But, says the Chayei Adam, if it's possible, try not to because of what Moshe. What do you think that halacha is teaching us? I'd like to offer that this message is probably one of the most important messages for parents, teachers, and rabbis. And I fit all three of that description. What's the message? When we see a child in our classroom, when we see a child in our house, we have to think he or she can be a Moshe. Every baby born should be viewed as a potential Moshe. And now I understand why it's on Shavuot specifically. Because Shavuot is the holiday of Matan Torah. Okay, let me just mute whoever's that. Okay. Shavuot is the holiday of Matan Torah. Hashem is giving the Torah. And the Torah is being given to anyone who wants to take it. Everyone could be a Moshe. I'm going to sing you a very, very famous song that your children sing, probably on Shavuot. I'm sure the teacher taught this on Zoom. You can sing with me. Here we go. Torah, 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 Torah. Everybody know that song? Good. Do you guys know the next line? Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Morasha kihilat Yaakov. Does anybody know what Morasha is other than a camp in the Poconos, which unfortunately is not opening? You know what the word Morasha means? It comes from the word Yerusha, inheritance. Torah from Moshe is an inheritance to anybody who wants. Little baby could be the greatest. And that's why on Matan Torah Day, we eat dairy to remember why Moshe didn't eat that dairy. It's a very important lesson in terms of, there's a very beautiful, I didn't print this, I should have. I really should give credit to our oldest child, Chil. He always tells me this Dvar Torah. I'm sure you'll remember it when I say it. Think back for the Haggadah for a minute. It goes like this. Baruch hamakom, right? Baruch hamakom, baruch hu, baruch shenatan Torah l'amo Yisrael. So we say, God gave us the Torah. And what's the next line? Keneged arba'a banim dibra Torah. What's the connection between God gave the Torah and there are 4 children? You know what the answer is? That no matter what kind of kid you have, he or she can be a successful Torah person. That's the message. You ready? Here it goes. So we keep taking this point. So I like this little saying, behind every young child who believes in himself is a parent who believed in them first. Now, really, it could be like Moshe? Take a look what it says here. So there's a Rambam, okay? The Rambam talks about Moshe Rabbeinu, greatest person. He led the Jewish people out, yada, yada, yada. Catch me right here next to the 3. The Rambam in Tshuva 5:2 says something absolutely shocking. He claims that everyone is capable of becoming a tzaddik like Moshe Rabbeinu. There, he says it. Everyone could be a Moshe Rabbeinu. But you know what? We need to understand what the Rambam is talking about, because I don't know how realistic that is. We say in Yigdal, Lo kam bi Yisrael. Does anybody know that line? Ki Moshe, there's nobody like Moshe. What does the Rambam mean that everybody could be like Moshe? And what does it mean for you and I as a parent and as a teacher in class to think like that? Because really, 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 he's going to be like Moshe? And let me tell you what I think the Rambam means. And I think that's the reason that we eat the dairy. Listen carefully. So we are in Sefer Bamidbar. Sefer Bamidbar is called Numbers. Is that a weird thing to call it? Numbers? Why is Sefer Bamidbar called Numbers? Okay, I'm sure you know. Because it's a constant counting of Bnei Israel. Hashem always tells Moshe, count the Jewish people. And almost always, when it says the word count, you know what I'm about to say? It doesn't say lispor. It doesn't say limnot. You should know what I'm about to say because I've said it a lot. Look at next week's parsha. Next week's parsha. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe v'la'aron lemor. Not this Shabbat. By the way, this Shabbat we don't read our regular weekly parsha, but but this Shabbat that we are reading for Shavuot, but next Shabbat is Parshat Naso. What does that mean? Hashem tells Moshe, Naso et Rosh B'nai Kahat. Count the sons of Kahat, the head, which means, right? And we learned Parshat Kitisa, right? So it doesn't say to count. I mean, it does say to count. What does the word Naso mean? What does Naso mean? So you've heard this from me more than once. So we define Naso. Naso, Nun, Sin, Aleph in Hebrew means carried or lifted. Before I even get to what I'm about to say, I'm going to digress. I'm going to digress for a moment, and I'm going to show you something fascinating. So when I looked this up, it said that Naso means carried. It also means married, which means nisuin. You guys know that the word nisuin, it also means married. So this source that I looked up, which happens to be a source on the internet, said that maybe this is the source of the custom. It's not the custom that we have to when you get married to carry your wife over the threshold. He says, Naso, pick up your wife. I know, it was very weird. So look what it says here. Marrying a wife equals the word lifting up or carrying a wife. This illuminates the old custom of lifting up and carrying the wife just after the wedding ceremony. If you did that too, you carried her when you got married. You should realize because of the Hebrew. But it also means lifting a wife, making her the better half. Okay, we all know how important that is. Okay, so let's go back to our original question. Our original question is, why does it say Naso? So we once explained that counting, and that's why it says numbers, is a very, very important way for us, because we sometimes as teachers say the kid is only a number. No, being a number here is a good thing, because if you remember, we said that when you count 1, 2, 3, 4, each number has its own personal characteristic. 2 is not 3, 3 is not 4. When you count a person, you make them count. Sorry for that very nerdy statement. Yeah, you don't count them, you make them count. And therefore it says naso, elevate them. But watch how this Gemara says so beautifully what we're referring to. Here we go. The Gemara says, each and every person must declare, the world was created for me. Can you imagine? This is talking about a religion that doesn't enjoy, frowns upon somebody who is haughty. But on the other hand, a person has to think, this world was created for me. In Hebrew, it's bishvili nivra ha'olam. What does that mean? Rashi explains that this means I am considered as important as the entire world. What does that mean? This is the one-time life experience of a particular person. There was never a person like him, nor there will ever be a person like him throughout history. I, with my special character strength, the child of my parents, born in a specific time period and in a certain environment, certainly there is a unique challenge that is placed upon me. I have a special share in the Torah, and the entire world is waiting for me to actualize that which is incumbent upon me, for my role cannot be exchanged with anyone in the world. That's the message of numbers. Do you know what the Rambam means when he says anybody could be like Moshe? He didn't mean like Moshe. He means like Moshe fulfilling his mission or her mission in this world. That's what it means. And that's why we eat the dairy to remember that everybody can end up fulfilling their own mission. I'm going to add 3 things. I once had a fascinating lecture by one of my rabbis in school. And before he was talking about this point. And next time you're in a crowd of people, it won't work now because you're all wearing masks. So this won't work. But next time you're in a crowd of people without masks, what the rabbi did before his lecture, you should try this really. He said, okay, everybody stop. Look at everyone around the room. Just look at them. Are you able to recognize each and every different person? And you're going, yeah. Is it fascinating that we all have, Baruch Hashem, 2 eyes and nose and ears and mouth, but everybody looks different? How did God do that? How are you able to do that with billions and billions of people, that everybody's face is unique? You know why? Because everybody's face is unique. Because everybody is given a different mission in life that they have to fulfill. And therefore, when we have a child, our job is to see the potential in them and to believe in them for them to become the best that they can be. And that's what it means to be like Moshe. And that's why in Matan Torah, I have to tell you 2 stories. And after I tell you 2 stories, I'm going to bring you a proof that God agrees with what we're saying. How's that? Pretty cool. Okay, 2 stories. First story I've said often. I heard this from Rabbi Goldwasser. He's a rabbi in Brooklyn. Rabbi Goldwasser tells the story that there was a yeshiva which had a bunch of boys who were not so easy, in different classes. So the principal decided to take all these boys and put them together in one class, challenging class. And who's going to teach these boys? So they went out and hired a new rabbi, and they didn't tell him anything. They said, go for it. The first week, the principal is like hiding in the office, waiting for explosions. Nothing. He walks by the classroom, the rabbi's teaching, the kids are listening. No one's getting thrown out. Gives it another week, 3 weeks, this guy is doing great with the class. They call the guy in, and they say, we're very proud of you. You're doing a great job. He goes, well, listen, of course, you gave me top kids. I'm doing a great job. They go, we gave you top kids? He goes, yeah, I'm not an idiot. Before I started teaching, I'm going to prepare myself. I came into the office, made an appointment with the secretary, and I said, can I see the IQ numbers of these children? She pulls out, and she shows me numbers. And he shows them the numbers he had. The principal looks at the sheet, and he goes, Rabbi, I don't know how to tell you this. These are not their RQ numbers. They're the locker numbers. That's the story he told, which means this teacher walked in. Peggy, you like that, right? Yeah. This teacher walked in with the attitude that these kids could do anything. Okay, look, does it work every time? No. You have unbelievable educators, much better than me. I'm looking at them as I'm talking to you, but I don't know. But you definitely start with that. It's a beginning. How many teachers have motivated students by their belief in them and in terms of their confidence? Second story is a very famous story. It's about the Netziv. We talked about him last week. The Netziv, Rabbi Berlin. Brilliant man, wrote many Sfarim. Famous story. When Netziv was a young boy, he was not such a good student. He was a little bit of a troublemaker. And he tells the story that he was in his room and he overheard his parents in the kitchen or wherever they were saying that, we're wasting time sending him to yeshiva. He's not doing that well. Let's take him out of yeshiva. Let's teach him a trade. And, this way we'll get something out of our education. He heard that conversation. He heard that conversation and he ran into where they were and he started crying and he begged them, please, I want to give it another chance. And of course, he went back to yeshiva and he became the Netziv. He says to his students, what would have happened if I wouldn't have run in that moment to my parents and begged them? I would have continued being a nice Jewish boy. I would have been a Shomer Torah mitzvot. I would have lived a decent, kosher life. And then after 120 years, listen carefully, guys, I would come up to heaven and then an angel would see me and say, oh, you, come here, I want to show you something. And he would bring me to a library and he would open the door and he would show me all the books that I ended up writing, but I wouldn't have written. And he said, you see all these Sfarim? All these would have been here if you would have stayed in yeshiva. Every person has a mission in life, and it is our job as parents to say to this baby, you could be Moshe. Now, how do I know that I'm right? I don't know that I'm right, but I want to bring a proof. I want to show you something fascinating. Moshe's birth. Shemot, Perek Bet. Ready? Here it goes. Vayelech ish mi bet Levi, vayikach et bat Levi. A man of the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi, and she had a baby, and she saw he was great. Does everybody know who these two people are? This is Moshe's birth. Who's the man? What's his name? Amram. Who's the girl's name? Yocheved, nicknamed Shifra Hanet. No, okay. Right, okay. We all know who these people are. Why is God playing games? What do you mean? Ish mi bet Levi, Isha mi bat Levi. We know who they are. We've already introduced them. Moshe is their third child. Why are we saying that? You know what we learned from there, guys? You don't have to have a holy father to become a holy person. You don't have to have yichus to be a great person. Is it nice to come from a great family? Fantastic. But each person is their own person. And Moshe would have been a Moshe without an Amram and without a Yocheved. See? That's God saying us. And there is such a proof like that also in Ruth, but I'm running a little out of time, so I'm just going to skip this part. But the Baal HaTurim in Shmos points out that it says a man, right, to teach us, the first Redeemer, right, the man there to show you, right, here we go. Any Jew is capable of producing a child who will be the greatest personage, right, in the generation of the Redeemer. Okay, so that is the reason why we eat the chalav, because to teach us Matan Torah. Everybody got the message? Okay. I want to show you something very moving right now. I have to introduce a little bit. It's a story about Rav Moshe Feinstein. Guys, I hope you hear it well, because it's one of the most beautiful stories that I've ever heard. A little bit of an intro. Rav Moshe Feinstein was, I don't know what to tell you, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, Gadol Hador. He was not Gadol. He was under 5 feet. But he was the end statement. All you needed to say in Torah was, Rav Moshe said so. And that was it. He was accessible. He was humble and probably the busiest man on the face of the world at that time. Everybody went and asked Rav Moshe. He gave out his number. People called Rav Moshe. He passed away in 1986. I want you to listen to this story. And I just have to give you a little intro because it's very, very yeshivish talk. So first of all, a kasha is a question from the word kushya. Tosfos is a commentary on the Gemara. There's Gemara, Rashi, and Tosafot. Tosfos. Tosfot is hard, is difficult. Kasha is a question. All right, the rest you'll just have to pick up. All right? The rabbi who's telling the story, his name is Rabbi Ephraim Shapiro. Please listen carefully. It makes me cry, but I hope you'll enjoy the story about the point that we just said. I just want to make this a better screen. Here we go. Okay, listen carefully. Here we go.
About 40 years ago, there were yeshiva bachrim that were not behaving as...
Okay, one second. Let me just go back. One more intro. I know this is a terrible thing to tell you, but I remember when I was a kid. Okay, not me. Kids used to prank call people. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. They thought it was funny, you know? They would call, they'd say, hello, Mrs. Weiss, is your refrigerator running? And she would go check and come back, and then we would say, we better go chase after it because you're not going to have any dinner. I mean, you know, prank calls, weird stuff. So kids prank called Rav Moshe. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back. Now you'll understand. Here we go.
There were yeshiva bachrim that were not behaving as they should. And so they got involved in phone scams. If you don't know what a phone scam is, I probably wouldn't believe you. It was quite popular years ago where you made a prank phone call, a bogus call, and you scammed someone. They took it to an abhorrent, unconscionable level. They called Meirei Halacha Gedolei Yisrael and asked bogus questions. It was one boy's turn to call Reb Moshe Feinstein. And at 11:30 at night, he called Reb Moshe. The Rebbitzin said, the Rosh Yeshiva sleeping, should I wake him? And the boy said, yeah. And Reb Moshe came to the phone, hearing it's a halachic question. He washed his hands. He asked the boy nearly at midnight what the question was, and when it was asked to Reb Moshe Feinstein, it was obvious that it was a scam, a bogus question. It was made up. Reb Moshe asked the boy, what yeshiva do you learn in? The boy didn't want to answer. He didn't want to get in trouble. Reb Moshe said, I won't get you in trouble. Where do you learn? He told him. What Gemara are you learning? He told him. What daf? He told him. He said, let me ask you a kasha on Tosfos. And he did. He said to the boy, do you understand the kasha? And the boy said, no. Like it was a miracle he knew what Bubba he was learning. The patience of Reb Moshe was legend. Without a Gemara, past midnight, Maisa Shahaya Kachaya, he taught the boy on the phone who attempted a phone scam, Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos of a whole Amud, word by word, line by line, top to bottom, aleph to taf, soup to nuts. He asked the boy, do you understand it? And the boy said no. Like Reb Preda in his door, Reb Moshe taught it. The only detail I don't know is if he taught it 3 times or 4 times, but he did. After an hour, he asked the boy lovingly, do you understand the kasha on Tosfos? And the boy said, that's an amazing kasha. Reb Moshe said, tomorrow in Yeshivah, when your Rebbe teaches Tosfos, ask him the kasha. They're learning Tosfos. The boy raises his hand. The Rebbe is wondering what, pray tell, could this kid want? And he asks the kasha. The Rebbe says, that's incredible. Where'd you get that kasha from? He says, Reb Moshe Feinstein. The Rebbe mutchered on the kasha all week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. He comes in Thursday, beaming like a light bulb, and he says to the class, I worked on it all week, and I have an answer to the kasha that was asked. And he gave a scintillating answer. Thursday evening, the boy comes home from Yeshiva, and he runs to his room, and he locks the door and cries. And his parents respectfully ask to be let in. They unlock the door, they walk in, and they see the boy is crying, Demoy Shalish. And they ask their son, the teenager, what happened? And all he could say through his tears were these words, Reb Moshe. Reb Moshe believed in me. Reb Moshe showed me love and validation and acknowledged me. Reb Moshe believed in me. And if Reb Moshe believed in me, then I believe in myself. You hear me, Tati and Mommy? I believe in myself. And I'm ready to go back tomorrow morning to Yeshiva to start learning. Because Reb Moshe believed in me, I believe in myself. And the next morning he turned his life around and he went back to Yeshiva. And obviously I wouldn't say his name today, but he's a Choshev Magachir in the Yeshiva Gedolim tri-state area. And if you would ask him why, you know what he would tell you? Because Reb Moshe, he believed in me. He believed in me. He believed in me. And if he believed in me, then I believe in myself.
No, come on. What do you say? Did you guys hear? Were you able to hear? I know you heard it because I see Peggy crying, so I know that you heard it. Yeah, me too, Peggy. I'm also crying. What can I tell you? That's the essence of why we eat. And now I love this. Is my favorite reason now. My favorite reason is to remember that Moshe, as a baby, we had belief in him that he would become a great person. Okay, done. Very late. We will run through the next reason. Okay, the next reason also is a very deep, sorry about that, a very deep, totally different one. Okay, reason number 4, I'm going to do this very fast. Okay, when Moshe ascended, okay, you know what, I'll do this part by heart. Listen carefully. The Gemara says when Moshe went up to get the Torah, the angels didn't want to give up the Torah. This is the story. The angels said to God, the Torah stays with us. Moshe was arguing. One of the arguments, okay, you're going to laugh again, but trust me, there's depth, is You didn't keep the Torah. We know how to keep the Torah. What are you talking about? Well, when you went to Avraham Avinu, you ate meat and milk. He served meat and milk. And you ate meat and milk. You weren't careful about the food. Therefore, the Torah is for us and not for you. Okay. Because of that, on Matan Torah, we eat we eat the 2 meals, meat and milk, to show how careful we are. That's the reason. By the way, something very cute. You know the famous saying, "Ein kemach, ein Torah." You ever heard that saying? So if Avraham would not have served them kemach, right? That's the first thing he gave them, then we wouldn't have had Torah because we would have lost this argument. So it's a nice saying. Okay. Is there depth to this? Why are we choosing this argument over other arguments about eating meat and milk by the Malachim? I want to show you something really interesting. We're going to learn real Gemara now. Guys, hang in there. This is deep Gemara. There are 2 psukim that contradict each other in the Torah. One pasuk says, Atzeret Lashem Elokecha. One pasuk says, Alok in the English. All right, here we go. One verse says, the holiday should be assembly for Hashem, okay, which indicates that the day is set aside for divine service. Another verse says, another pasuk says, Atzeret Tihye Lachem. Okay, so again, we have a contradiction in the Torah. One pasuk says holiday should be for God, and one pasuk says holiday should be for us. How do we understand that? So there's a machloket in the Gemara how to deal with that between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Eliezer says that the 2 verses should be understood as a choice. Either learn all day, pray all day, that's your main thing on the holiday, that's for those people who are spiritual, or entirely for you. If you're not a spiritual type of person, you pray a little less, and you eat a little more, and you make special meals. Rabbi Yeshua said, no, you can fulfill both verses, split the day, half for God and half for you. Okay, not that exciting. Now watch what the Gemara says. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Hakol modim be'atzeret be'inan nami lachem. English. Rabbi Elazar said, all agree when it comes to the holiday of Shavuot that we must have for you. Let me explain what that means. That means that everybody agrees that Shavuot must have physical pleasure. You must. Even the rabbi who says you don't have to have physical pleasure on other holidays, Shavuot, you got to eat like a pig, guys. You got to make a barbecue. You got to eat cheesecake. Why? Why Shavuot of all the other holidays? Shavuot is the most what? Come on, it's about Matan Torah, right? It's the least physical of all the holidays. And the answer is something that we've been saying for years, guys. You know why the angels were wrong? Because Hashem said, I don't want angels. I don't want the Torah for angels. I want angels, but the Torah is supposed to be the way to elevate physical to spiritual. That's what we want. Hashem has the angels. He created us, ladies and gentlemen, to be in this physical world. And we're supposed to elevate. And that's why we remember that part by eating the meat and the dairy. So, meaning, what is our goal? Our goal is to take the cheesecake, but make it kosher. Take the cheesecake and don't eat it with meat. That's what it means to lead a physical life, which is spiritual. And that's the goal. And that's why we remember that custom. There we go. Look at the bottom. What the angels and spiritual beings do not appreciate by physical senses is implanted within, able to elevate above the mundane and temporal, right? Therefore, although the physical elements of man's makeup is indeed naturally distant from godliness, it is specifically because of that element that we can give glory. We've said this 1,000 times, guys. It's a very important thing. Judaism is not about going to the mountains and fasting. No, Judaism is not about putting on a robe and not speaking for 40 years. No, Judaism is about talking to people, eating with people, living with people, but elevate it. We in our religion, you've heard this from me. In certain religions, getting married is wrong. It's a bad thing. In Judaism, it's not. It's physical, but elevated to spiritual. And that is why we eat the dairy, to remember that situation of the Malachim. With that, I'm going to answer another really strong question. I'm going to move fast. We stay up all night, right? I told you that was the other custom. Does anybody know why we stay up all night? Where does it come from? It comes from a really weird story. So they tell us we stay up all night, or as much as we can this year, staying up Shavuot night. The following reason has been suggested for this custom. There's a midrash which says that on the morning of the revelation of Sinai, the Jewish people overslept. God descended upon Mount Sinai to give the Torah to Israel. And you're right, Moses had to rouse us and hurry us to the mountain. To make up for this, we stay up the entire night of Shavuot. Okay? Did you hear that? God said, I'm coming. They were nothing ever makes sense till you make sense out of it. They were told for 3 days, we're getting excited about this Matan Torah. Tomorrow is the big day. Guy, can I ask you a question? If your child is getting married tomorrow, you're going to oversleep? Who oversleeps? Who does that? If you have tickets to the biggest game in the world, if you have, I don't know, your kid is graduating, who oversleeps? That is insane that the Jewish people overslept and that Moshe had to wake him up for Kabbalat Torah, and that's why we stay up. Okay, doesn't make sense to me. And it gets even worse. Watch. Here we go. Ooh. The Medrash states that on the morning of the giving of the Torah, the Jewish people slept in. Unbelievable. Just imagine sleeping in and missing the plane to a vacation you were planning for a year. I did that already. Right. Why? Then watch. As an atonement for this, the Jews are okay. But that's not all. The Midrash continues to tell us that Hashem was pleased by their actions and did not allow the mosquitoes to bite them. I don't know what that means. I don't know there are mosquitoes in the Midbar, as not to disturb their peaceful slumber. If the Jewish people sleeping was sinful, necessitating atonement, why would God go out of his way to ensure that their sleep not be disturbed? Everybody got the question. I want you to see the depth of this answer. This is the explanation of why the Jewish people went to sleep purposely in anticipation. They felt that in order to absorb the essence of God's Torah, they can't remain awake in full control over their faculties. After all, how can a human mind, the most brilliant, possibly comprehend the sublime subtleties of Hashem's wisdom? So they went to sleep hoping that on this unconscious level of their souls would be able to assimilate the true essence of the Torah. Hashem appreciated the gesture, but sent Moshe to wake them up. Hashem does not want to give the Torah to inanimate pieces of flesh. That he could have given it to the angels, right? He wanted people fully conscious with temptation and distraction. Let me explain the depth of this. This is such a deep concept. The Jewish people felt we're physical. You know, when I'm awake, my mind wanders, guys. You know, maybe I'm thinking of things that I shouldn't. Maybe I'm hungry. I'm thinking of physical things. So therefore they felt, you know, we can't become spiritual when we're awake. Let us be sleeping, and then God will into us in our neshama. And Hashem said, no, I need you physical, with your distractions and with your Yetzer Hara. And your job is to elevate it. And that is why we stay up all night. Not because they did something wrong, because God says that's not what I want. I want you physically there. Yes. You're sitting up at 3 a.m. and you're thinking, coffee and cheesecake. But that's normal. That's average. It's okay. You got to work on it. You got to say, no, I got to stop thinking about the cheesecake. Fine. That's what it's about. It's about working yourself day after day. And to prove that point, and I've said this 1,000 times in our class, I want to show you this point, how important it is. I want to go back for a minute. Purim, you guys know this already. Purim is a holier holiday than Yom Kippur. Can you imagine somebody saying that? They didn't teach that in Hebrew school. Purim, the word Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim, a day like Purim. At first glance, we would assume that Yom Kippur is the greater of the 2 days, but it's not. Watch. Because on Purim, our state of rambunctious inebriation, right? I'm sorry, let's go back here. Yom Kippur, as we pray, we don't do anything, we fast. We're like angels, right? If one attains holiness through affliction and another attains holiness through indulgence, who is the greater of the two? It may be said that the one who attains holiness through indulgence is greater. For the attainment of holiness through indulgence requires an infinitely greater degree of striving and effort, which means Yes, there is a need for Yom Kippur, but that's not the highest worship of God. The highest worship of God is Shavuot, eating, but doing it kosher, making a bracha, saying Birkat HaMazon, and also, of course, sharing it with others, but I'm not going in the chesed element right now. That's the goal. Everybody got it? All right, what I want to do with 5 minutes left is for those who were, I'm not blaming anybody for not coming. We had a Monday night class. We'd love to have you. But there was a part that I saw, it blew my mind, that I shared with those who were here Monday night. I'm not making anybody feel bad for not being here. So if you were already here Monday night, you have a right to leave the class, but you can listen again if you want. But I got a request from somebody to repeat because they heard about it. So I'm going to do it, and I think it's really important. So what I'm doing now is the last 5 minutes of what I did Monday night, but it's really important. So it's okay if I don't see you afterwards, and have a good Yom Tov. Okay, so here we go. Ready? Okay, let me just make sure that we're closing. Okay, mute. Ready? Go. Okay, I want you to listen carefully. One of the psukim before Matan Torah, the very famous pasuk we always talk about the importance of women, is the reading of this Shavuot. Moshe goes up to Hashem, and Hashem says, "Vayikra elav Hashem in ahar lemor ko tomar lebeit Yaakov v'taged b'nei Yisrael." In this order, you should speak to the Bet Yaakov and speak to Bnei Yisrael. So everybody knows that Beit Yaakov here means the women, and Bnei Yisrael mean the men. And we always talk about how important women are. And we know that because Rabbi Yossi said, my wife is the home, the woman is the home. But there's, besides the fact of showing us how great women are, because we all know that already, there's another message here. Ko, in this order, speak to the home of Yaakov, and then speak to the congregation of Yisrael, which means that in order for Jewish nation to exist with the Torah, for us to be unique, it has to start first with the home. The home has to be the place where Judaism, spirituality is infused into the child. Once there is a home, then we move to the synagogue. Once there is a base, that's the most important. That's what God says. And the other pasuk that I showed you on the bottom was Matovu Alecha Yaakov Mishkanotecha Yisrael. First to Ohel. So what I shared Monday night is something that I saw 2 weeks ago in Mishpacha magazine. That I think if you heard it, I'm glad you're listening again. If you didn't, if you want, I can send it to you. I want you to send it to as many people as you can. Listen carefully to this. This is just probably the most important piece of writing that I can share with you in this last 3 months of this pandemic. Listen carefully. This was Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch. He was a very great Talmid Chacham. He was a brilliant man. He lived from 1808 till 1888. He was a German Orthodox rabbi, intellectual founder of Torah in Derech Eretz. Understand that he understood that he has to broaden Jewish education in certain ways and bringing in other worldly thoughts. Very progressive person in terms of understanding, but a very, very strict Orthodox Jew. And of course, he was the man, very important to know, right here, he was the vocal opponent of Reform Judaism and conservative. Please understand, the man lived in the 1800s. It was at that time that the world, or the Jewish world, started to say, you know what, other thoughts, maybe change things, like that. So again, listen carefully what he wrote. It's a little scary how prophetic he was. With obviously no knowledge of the coronavirus. In the late 1800s, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch wrote this paragraph. Listen carefully. If I had the power, I would provisionally close all synagogues for 100 years. Do not tremble at the thought of it, Jewish heart. What would happen? Jews and Jewesses without synagogues, desiring to remain such, would be forced to concentrate on a Jewish life and a Jewish home. The Jewish officials connected with the synagogue would have to look to the only opportunity now open to them, to teach young and old how to live in a Jewish life and how to build a Jewish home. All synagogues closed by Jewish hands would constitute the strongest protest against the abandonment of the Torah in the home and life, yada, yada, yada. So the person who brought it down adds, far too long, the synagogues have replaced the home and its centrality in the Jewish life. Sure, synagogues are ideal places for Jewish gatherings, life celebrations, communal, but life itself does not, life plays itself out primarily in the home, surrounded by the most profound influence, our parents. You know, I'm going to add a story we used to say at seminar. I didn't say this Monday. It's one of the most famous seminar stories about immigrants who came from the old country, and the parents still had the religion. They lived in Brooklyn, and their next generation, unfortunately, you know, was not as strong, and they weren't religious, and they didn't keep Shabbat, and they didn't do things. And they live out who knows where, somewhere in the island. And the story goes that every Sunday they used to take their kids to visit the old grandma and grandpa. And on their way out, in one of those meetings, they saw their younger son kiss the mezuzah and say something. And the first time they didn't ask him. After 3 or 4 visits, they see he keeps doing that. He kisses the mezuzah on the way out, and he says something. Now, we all know that we don't say anything when you kiss the mezuzah. So they said, sweetheart, what do you say when you leave grandpa and grandma's house on the way out when you kiss the mezuzah? He goes, oh, I kiss the mezuzah and I say, bye-bye, God. We'll see you next week. That's the story. It's one of the most famous seminar stories for years. Bye-bye, God. But today, or in his days, what was he worried about? He was worried about that the shul will become the religion. And when we leave the shul, take off the kippah, sit down, zaygezind, have a good day. We don't need to be religious at home because we have Yeshivah Flatbush. We don't need that. So the man said, close the shuls. I don't know. I guess God listened to him 100 years later. Because the lesson is that the home is the one that has to be the place which is the most influential. And that's what he said. And then if you want, I ended just with that nice saying from, there it goes, from Elie Wiesel, I don't recall a Jewish home without a book on the table, which means you walk into a Jewish home, is there an 85-inch TV screen? Okay, I'm not against that. Very nice. As I get older, I need a bigger screen. I can't see things anyway. I got it. But what's prominent in the house? Is there a bookcase? Is there a bookcase in your house? I mean, I'm not trying to criticize, but when one walks into the home, is there a Jewish presence? Like you know, what's up there? Is it the vase from India, which is beautiful? Is there a nice shas? Is there a Gemara there? What's on the table? What's on the table? Are there 4 gadgets of phones on the table with wires coming from all over? Or is there a Chumash that I was studying last night? Is there a Gemara that I was studying last night? These are the things that are important. And therefore, during the holiday of Matan Torah, it's important to practice all these things. Guys, please don't forget the first part we did. I was very excited about it. Obviously, that you know, I'm the one who wants to be excited, but so do you. That concept of that Moshe Rabbeinu, of having faith in our children is very big. Okay, Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to open you up. We're on next week, guys. We're on next week with God.